All right, so the first thing you need to understand up front is that I'm completely serious about this. So a couple years ago, I was working in a Pro Tools session and I was doing a lot of automation. And I came across this really neat trick that I can do with instrument tracks. And it completely changed my workflow, and I haven't used any AUXs in over 2 years. And today, I'm gonna share that with you. So this would be considered an advanced Pro Tools workflow. If you are relatively new to Pro Tools and you're not familiar with all of the routing possibilities and things that you can do, I made this video for you, which is a short demonstration of how to use bus routing in Pro Tools 5 different ways, okay? So you might check that out first before we come back into here. Also, for Pro Tools Standard users, in this video I'm gonna use quite a few Pro Tools Ultimate quick keys. But for Pro Tools Standard users, I made another video that shows you how to do some of these automation keys, the equivalent of that in Pro Tools Standard, so that you can still do those for the most part, just kind of workarounds for how to do those things that take a little bit longer but are still possible, okay? And you can check that video out as well. So this is really applicable, I think, for anyone who's watching this, and I'm excited to see what your reaction is to this. So we thank the creator for our time today. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Let's get into it. All right, so what we have here is a Pro Tools session with a couple different memory locations. The first one here is focusing more on music production. We have a verse and a chorus of a music track that we're putting together here. And another memory location that I have is going to focus on post-production for film and just some cool posting examples and demonstrations we can do there as well. So in this session, we have quite a bit going on where we can see uses for aux tracks in here. Here is one stereo aux track for a reverb effect for a snare layer that's happening here. So we're going to start our discussion there. But as I scroll down through the session, you're going to see here's a drum submix track that is an instrument track. It's not an aux. And as I go down through the session, everywhere where I would have an effect track or a submix track, they're all instrument tracks and not auxes. And down here at the bottom, I have an instrument submix where all the instruments are feeding, and that's everything except for the drums and bass are going through that track. So we'll finish our discussion doing something in there in just a few minutes. So the first thing we're going to do is just listen to just a couple seconds of this beat here, and then we're going to come in and have some fun with some effects routing. All right. So what I want to start with here is starting with the snare as it comes in on this chorus section here. So we're going to go down to the bottom first. We're going to mute this instrument track and head back up to the top. Now, I'm going to open this reverb plugin and take a look at it, because what I want to do is actually want to make this reverb a little bit more interesting when it comes in on this section. I want a different reverb on every snare. And so my premise kind of starts there. I want some extra things. I want to take this up another level other than just having a single effect on all the snares. And so what's the easiest way to do that? So in Pro Tools Ultimate, we have a couple keys in here in our automation submenu. Write to current, write to all enabled, glide to current, glide to all enabled are the keys that I'm going to use more than anything else in here. But you can see write to current is Control/, and write to all enabled is Control-Alt/, and I'm going to use those keys quite a bit here. So the first thing I need to do is enable everything on the reverb for automation. We do that by holding down all three modifiers and clicking on the auto button here. So everything is off. Now everything is on again. And for the time being, I only want to write plugin automation, nothing else. So my automation window in here, I'm going to turn everything else off. Okay. Now I'm going to zoom in here. And so for this aux track, essentially what I want is an effect from here to here and a different effect from here to here. I actually want to give the reverb just a slight amount of time to switch over before the next snare happens. So I'm going to change my grid to 30-second notes, and I'm going to do everything a 30-second note earlier, like this, from this position to this position. And so another key I'm going to use quite a bit just up front is that for any enabled parameter on a track or a plugin, if I hold down Control and Start and click on the reverb time, the balance, the mix, the room size, you can see that the track view is changing to show me that parameter. So it's just a cool trick in Pro Tools to be able to jump perfectly to, the parameter that you're doing automation for. I'm doing automation for everything, so but there are certain parameters that I'm going to want to jump to from time to time. Now I'm going to lock in this default reverb setting that I have for this first snare, and to do that we go Control-Alt/, to lock in all of the plugin parameters. Again, only plugin is active. And right here we see a breakpoint at the beginning and the end of this selection for the reverb time. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on what my presets are. I just want to find different presets in here. So if I go to something like Boost, you can see that's very different. It's a very short reverb time, a very small room. I am going to take the mix percentage up to 100%. I'm going to make my selection first, actually, before I do that. And we'll come back to the Boost preset. And I now want to lock this preset in for that selection. So I use the same quick key, Control-Alt/, and we can see that obviously the reverb time changed because that's the view that we're looking at. I'm going to make another selection here and just pick another preset. Here's the scoring stage preset, somewhere in between what I started with and the Boost one. That's cool. I'm going to go with more of a tail reflection here, just change a couple little things. And that's fine. Let's just use this as a preset. Control-Alt/, is preset number 3. And then I want the fourth preset. I'm just going to do 4. I want the fourth preset to be this kind of bigger, resounding, lengthened reverb tail on the fourth beat, to come out just kind of stronger and bigger. So I'm going to look for this cathedral preset that's in here. You can see the reverb time is really long. The room size is pretty big, a little more tail reflection here for me, a little bit more ambience maybe. And I'm going to open the cutoff filter here just so we get a brighter reverb on the back end of that. And that's going to be my preset here, and I'm going to go Control-Alt/. So if I move my cursor around and you look at the reverb, you can see that I have one preset here, a different preset here, another one here, and another one here. So we have really good automation workflows here in Pro Tools. I can select from here to here if I want to copy all that automation down, and I can use this feature for copy special. The quick key here would be Start Control V to copy all automation, or I could just do plugin automation, and then I could paste all of that automation again here and continue that going forward. So we have good automation keys and features in here to be able to use. I want this to come together faster and to be more interactive. So this is a typical use for a stereo aux if I'm using a time-based effect like this reverb plugin, okay? But the way that I want to work about this is a little bit more interactive. So I'm going to create a stereo instrument track here instead. And I'm going to name this actually the same thing. I'm going to put a space in there because it has to have a different name. And I'm going to set this up identically, okay? Snare effects bus here, drum sub on my output here. And so this looks pretty good. We'll solo safe the instrument track, and we're going to drag this reverb down to this track. Now, by doing that, I actually brought all of the automation in the background, because that's what happens in Pro Tools by default. You take a plugin with automation from one track to the other, the automation goes with it. That's pretty cool. So what do instrument tracks give us that aux tracks don't, right? I'm going to delete this now. I'm not going to use that anymore. I like my effects tracks to be this bright green color. So they obviously give us MIDI. I have a MIDI I/O section here in the instrument column, but much more fundamentally than that, they give us clips. And for anyone who's done a lot of automation work in Pro Tools, you understand that there's a feature in Pro Tools, as in some other DAWs, and in here it's called Automation Follows Edit. And it's this button right here. This button right here is on, now it's off, now it's on again. So automation follows edit means that your automation follows any automation underneath a clip boundary goes with the clip boundary. If you copy and paste a snare or a kick and you have automation underneath, all that automation is actually going with it. So we're used to that behavior typically with audio tracks. But with instrument tracks, with effects, we don't really talk about it too much, but with instrument tracks, this is perfect. Because with an instrument track, I can create a clip as an automation container, and that gives me a whole new world of production possibilities, okay? So watch this. I'm going to assign the output of this instrument to just an arbitrary bus in the background. It doesn't even matter what it is. There's no MIDI going anywhere, but it activates the color on the track. And we know where our presets are changing up. So I'm going to control start click here on the track name. That takes me back to clip view by default. And I'm going to render an empty container here. And I'm going to call this, I'm going to right click and rename and call this my, this is going to be my default reverb that I started with, right? I have another setting that's from here to here. So I'm going to create a clip there and right click, rename this. This was my boost preset, right? 3 is going to be, what did we do? We changed up the scoring stage preset there. And then the last one was our kind of big boomy reverb. You can name these whatever you want. I'm just doing it after the presets themselves. Cathedral, that's kind of a weird word to type out there. And now that I have clips here in place, I can also color code them differently, which just makes this a little bit more fun. And let's do something like this. Give me a blue in here. Okay, so really clearly easy to tell where the breaks are in here. I'm going to open an automation lane and just show a plug-in automation lane underneath, right? So we can see what's going to happen here. Now, remember the keys that I was talking about a moment ago. We were talking about copy special, getting all the layers of automation. Well, now, guys, all I have to do is this. I'm just going to alt-drag my clips over here. And because automation follows edit, all the automation is there underneath for these presets to change. And you know what? The scoring stage preset is okay, but what I really want is, whoops, held the wrong key down there. What am I doing? So I'm going to alt-drag this one over here too. And I just want that default preset in there again. So just really, really easy to change up presets when you're using clips this way, right? So let's listen to the playback of our chorus here. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to add a compressor here just to pull the reverbs out a lot more, make this a lot more obvious. I'm just going to crush these for a minute and just pull this out. We'll give ourselves a little bit more send level in here. So we're just going to make sure we can hear what's happening there really easily. Okay, how cool is that, right? And how easy is this to do? Now let's take this up another level here because I have a problem here at the end, right? This cathedral effect just kind of stops abruptly at the end of that section right there. Well, when automation follows edit, it follows the clip boundary. So all I'm going to do is just trim the cathedral clip out to here because I want that reverb to continue until the next downbeat of the verse. Come on, how cool is that, right? So that's one example by using a time-based effect and what you can do with reverb on a track like this. And obviously you can do this with any kind of effect, so I'm sure your wheels are spinning right now, thinking about different ways you can use this. Let's do another example, okay? I'm going to go down here to my actual drum submix because one of the things that we generally use these tracks for is to EQ everything, add some compression on everything, whatever kind of dynamics you're doing. But we also do effects on things here as well. So I'm just going to do a couple simple examples here. I think on drums, we tend to do a lot of different kinds of effects. I'm going to do an example of a phaser and a distortion here on this track here. So I'm going to go in here to my modulation. I'm just going to use the air phaser, just makes everything easy. And I'm going to slow the rate down a little bit and make the depth really obvious. Just a really obvious phaser setting. And so here's the thing with effects. I only want the effect to happen when the clip comes in on the track, right? So what that means is I need the default of this plugin to be bypassed. And so I'm going to enable everything for automation. All three modifiers click here to enable everything for automation. This plugin gives you that indication. And then I'm going to bypass. I'm going to go Control Start, click on the bypass so I can see the bypass lane in here. And I'm just going to go Control/ just to lock in a breakpoint for bypass, just to make that quick. And now this plugin by default is bypassed everywhere on the track. Meanwhile, I'm going to just make a selection here, take the bypass off, okay, and then go Control-Alt/, and you can see it locked in a setting with the bypass open. And then we're going to go back to the clip view. We're going to consolidate this clip and rename this. And I'm going to call this just phase 1 for the name because we might do a number of different, phaser settings as we were doing something like this. Assign the output of this track to just an arbitrary port somewhere. Doesn't matter. And so now here the phaser is open. Here it's bypassed again. You can see that as we go anywhere else on the track. So where do I want to do a phase on the drums somewhere? Let's see. All right, so right there, well, actually, that reverb preset is really dry and short. I actually want something that kind of carries out a little bit. All right, so maybe down here, let's just go right here, and we'll just have this kind of phaser effect come in for those couple beats. All right, that's kind of fun. We already have the reverbs going off in the background, changing constantly, but now we have a phaser setting just thrown in on the drum kit as a whole, just right in that pocket, okay? That's pretty cool. Let's do something else. I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to find my... Let's go with the Devil Lock plugin from Sound Toys. Not as much of an indication of automation enable here, but if I click there, you can see the bypass went green. Everything is over here on the right, so we have that set up properly. Distortion's kind of tricky, especially with this, because it's pretty aggressive, so I'm going to pull the mix percentage down a little bit, dull this down a little bit, and then I'm just going to squash. Hulk smash drums. I'm going to go back here. I'm going to do the same thing I did a minute ago. I'm just setting a bypass position on the track somewhere, and I'm using Control/ to do it because it's just quick to do that, but I could just click with the grabber and make a breakpoint in there as well. I'm going to go now and make another selection here for the distortion. That's kind of long. Doesn't matter. Unbypass, Control-Alt/, go back to clip view, create the clip, right-click, rename, distortion. And the output of the track's already assigned. That's where I was going there with the next one. So where do we want to add distortion in here? All right, so I'm going to pop this distortion in on this last, pardon me, just on this last beat right here. I don't know what that's going to do. I'm just making this up as I go. All right, so pretty aggressive, like I was saying a moment ago. I probably need to take the mix percentage down a little bit more again. All right, so maybe I'd put those two in there. I'm kind of doing this upbeat thing with this. Yeah, whatever. Okay, so it's interesting. What I actually need to do, I'm going to take 3 of these back out, and I'm going to go back to this one and take the mix percentage down a lot more. So I just want it to be this subtle thing that's kind of happening in there more, and all I'm doing is doing the quick key again, Control-Alt/, and then I'll just drag this back out again, and see if that cleans up just a little bit. Okay, so it's just interesting. I think it's interesting. It might be overdone a little bit. This one might be a little too strong up front. Okay, but it's just something you can do, just showing you different ways that you can move clips around. All of this really hinges on setting a default bypass and locking that in somewhere earlier in the track where it's just kind of out of your way. And I would probably color code these a little bit different too. So my phaser and my distortion, it's really easy to tell the difference between those. Where you come to is you start to get used to this kind of place where you see multicolored clips on tracks, you kind of know that those are instrument tracks with effects or submixes or things like that. By the way, just to throw this out there, even if somehow I ended up with a clip way out there, even if you don't have any effects on a track at all, right? One of the things you could do is you could just say, I want to make my submixes easier to see on a break, and you could just do this. You could just select from here to here and just have a clip, and based on your track color that you use for your submixes, that could be a really clear submix break in your session for you. How many times do we have AUXs, right? But AUXs don't have clip color, anything through the session at all. But this would make all of that really easy to see. If I'm here, that would make my submixes really easy to see just because there's an empty clip there, even if you're not doing anything production crazy. It's just another use for how to work a track like that. So I'm going to undo that, keep a couple of our effects there. Okay, so let's do one more example on the music side. I'm going to go all the way down here to my instruments, which have been muted. And I'm just going to do an example of mute automation, right? We want to find interesting places where we can probably cut the music and, underneath the drums and the bass and just do some more interesting things there. So same kind of thing here. I'm just going to zoom in and I'm going to... I should have put a memory location in here, which I didn't do. I'm going to go ahead and do that here. This is where my chorus is, since I'm down here at the bottom. So I'm just going to take just a short example here. I'm going to go to my mute view, mute that, create a clip here, right click here, rename this as mute, and arbitrary port somewhere, doesn't matter. So here we are muted, here we are not. Okay, so everything is open unless this clip comes in somewhere. So let's just do the same kind of thing. Okay, I'm kind of getting an idea here for a triplet use of mute automation. It's actually going on with the distortion at the same time, but it'll be a different kind of cadence. So I have no idea what's going to happen. Let's just see what happens here. I'm going to go in here with an 8th note triplet. I'm going to shorten this. And... okay, so what if I put this right here? And I'm just going to do some triplet mutes right here. I might have to move my distortion pieces. right, so I'm going to take the first one out. Yeah, this is just how you mess around with this stuff, right? Who knows? And then this is, for whatever reason, this is just kind of more subtle and interesting down here. All right, I kind of like what I'm doing up here. I'm just going overboard, playing around with that. How much is too much on the end here? All right. So you can also do this kind of thing. I'm going to mute that last one, that last clip. Trying to mute. I guess there isn't anything to mute if I don't have MIDI in it, so it's actually not even letting me do that. I was just making that up on the spot. That would be kind of interesting. But it's not going to let me mute something that's actually not there. So let's see. All right, pretty cool. So a couple examples there of how to do this within context of music production, but you can see how much more interactive everything becomes and how much easier doing things to sweeten music becomes, right? Really simple track parameters. We could do a whole bunch of things in here with pan that, we're not even getting into right now. So really cool ways of doing this. And here's the thing, guys. Here's the new question, right? It's not why would I use instrument tracks for this stuff? It's why would you ever use AUXs? Why do you need AUXs? If you don't want all this automation clip stuff, okay, then just don't create any. That's fine. But why not have an instrument track there in the off chance that you might want to do something later? And it's not always about electronic or R&B or whatever it is, that we're doing where we kind of expect a whole lot of production movement going on. It's just, you never know when you want to make that one bar of a song a little bit more interesting on your guitar reverb or whatever that effect might be, and having everything prepared in an instrument track, setup just makes it all a lot easier to work with. So super, super cool, super fun. Let's go to another memory location here. And in this location, we're going to, the post guys are going to love this. I'm just going to do a couple examples here as we move forward. So what we have here is just a really simple short film that I edited together with my brother-in-law. So it was our acting debut. But just to have something to put together that just shows transitions in space, and that would require effects, changes, automation, those kinds of things to come in, okay? So the first thing here, I think, is I'm going to take the multiple clip reverb thing up a level with a couple quick keys in Pro Tools that I know a lot of post people are familiar with, and how much easier this becomes. I need to change my timeline in here to time code, my grid to time code. We're going to work on frames here for a little bit. My nudge value is already set to 1 frame at a time. Maybe that's a hint, what we're about to do here. But so what we need to do is, I have already used this track as a template. What I want to do is zoom out here and just show you that I already have an instrument track with a number of clips in here that are storing specific kinds of automation. And so over here to the left, I have a whole bunch of, what are plugin preset clips over here. So small room, small natural plate, high ceilings, medium kitchen, medium reflective, apartment drywall. I'm naming a couple of these things after presets that are in the Revibe plugin that we're using now. So I'm going to assign the output of the track again, just arbitrary port, just so we can see that. So I already have a number of clips already prepared. I also have panning clips over here, which is going to be really fun in just a moment. But so when you have, plug-in preset clips and you're ready to set up you already have your scenes, your memory locations in here, and you're ready to start spotting things. This is what this looks like. In this shot here, we are inside. We're in around what looks like a kitchen, for example. And so we have I have a medium kitchen plugin preset here. So I'm going to click on the memory location. Now, when you're on an instrument track, trying to use modifier keys with the Smart tool gets a little tricky. You can't just snap clips to place. So I'm going to change to just the grabber tool there. And then I can start click on the medium kitchen, right? And then just change up my tool and just take that out to wherever that next memory location is. Here we are outdoors. So outdoors, I'm going to do just a small natural plate, just having something in there. Grabber tool again, start click. And you can see how easy it is to kind of start filling these things out. Here we're in a car. So give me that memory location. And a small, probably something small again, but just to use a different preset here, I'm just going to control click there, right? Just so we kind of get these spotted and put them in where we want. Now, of course, at this position, I can just trim these out. I probably would color code them differently at this point, but we can see how easy it is to lock in plug-in presets for a scene when you already have your memory locations put in. But here's what I want to show you. This is so great because a lot of times you have a transition in where a scene happens where you're trying to get the effect overlap in that transition just right. So we know that we have keys for extending and trimming clip boundaries in Pro Tools, okay? So for example, I'm on Windows here, so the key to trim the end of a clip is Control plus and minus. And the clip that you have selected is the one that is going to take precedence over where that boundary is. So I think to show this effectively, I need you to see the preset automation already where we are. So maybe, let me find let's just go to Reverb Time. Just going to show that here. Let's see. So, all right, I do want to show it down here. Reverb Time, where's my time? Right here. Okay. All right, so we have the reverb time underneath. We can see that there's a preset change there. But watch what happens if I nudge the end of this clip. I want it to go another frame, right? So Control plus, that was the wrong plus, duh. That's a pretty good Pro Tools joke right there. Control plus on the numeric pad, of course, extends this automation out another frame, but it's extending it out based on the clip that I have selected. So by selecting the clip and extending that boundary out, it's the same thing as using the trim tool, right? It's basically the same thing, but just showing that the one that you have selected, Alt plus and minus now, so Alt minus, where am I? Not Alt. Yeah, it should be Alt, right? Alt minus, there we go. Minus minus takes us back 2 frames, so it's the one that you have selected that you trim out to help you get the transition just right by doing that a frame or a couple frames at a time, okay? How cool is that, right? Okay, so let's take this up another step. Control plus to get that lined up again. And just to show this, I'm just going to take these presets back out of here for just a moment. We're just going to undo all that because that'd just be faster. And I just want to talk about panning automation because if you can look at the reverb here, you can see I have this set up for an Atmos context because I think this is going to be extremely helpful. A lot of people are mixing in Atmos now. So the output of this reverb, for example, right, is going to an Atmos bus. And what I've done is instead of doing plug-in automation over here, everything that we've been doing in the automation window is plug-in based. We would take all of this off except for pan, and we can create pan clips for positions for the reverb in the room, okay? So if I click here, the pan is up front. If I click here, the pan is at the side. If I click here, the pan is at the rear. Pan height, front, pan height, rear. And so wherever you position these things, right? What's going on screen here? I'm just going to basically show what that looks like, right? And so here we have pan height, rear, right? And we need to extend that position out until this next thing happens on screen, and we want all of that to be pan rear and to bring the reverb down. Just showing you how positioning the reverb in the room, how easy that is, okay? So let's do this a little bit differently here. I'm gonna take this clip, and let's assume that I'm just gonna press tab at the end of the clip. I actually want the reverb to be forward. So I wanna go from height rear to height forward, and or height front. And so at this position, I have only pan enabled. And so at this position, it actually needs to be a glide for automation. And that makes this a little bit interesting, I guess. I'm going to go and I'm going to jump to just the pan here. And I've got a couple of breakpoints in there. It's a little suspicious. So I'm going to make a selection here at this point. Actually, what I need to do is just create a new clip from scratch. I think that would just be easier for everyone to see, easier for me to pull off, and easier to understand. So at this position, right, we want everything, for example, in the rear up top. And so this is where we want this position to be. If I get that perfect, there we go. So again, just writing pan automation. Got to be careful here. You can't touch anything. Just writing pan automation. So Control-Alt/, locks in these pan values, right? So there is that value now. Now down here at the end of the scene, for example, I want everything to be forward, right? So all I'm doing is changing the front to rear parameter there. And now I'm going to do a glide. So now my glide, let's see, glide to all enabled, if I can get this right, is going to be Shift-Alt/ for me. And we can see the glide happening from the back to the front of the room because I'm on the front to rear parameter. So now this clip right here is saving a glide. And I can rename this to be reverb rear to front. Or we have to be a little bit more specific if we're doing Atmos, right? This is height, rear to front, for example, is what that clip is. So if we just press play here, we can see the automation is going from the rear to the front of the room, right, over that time. So it's not just about static positions, right? This is a container for whatever you have going on. And let's see what happens if we shorten this a little bit. Then that automation, ooh, it's actually a little shorter. It's not catching, is it? So we can undo that. Let's go back to this parameter and see what happened. So I wonder if, as I'm right on the edge back here, I'm going to change my view here to the pan and to the front to rear position, because this is, we really want this to work, don't we? My gosh. So if I trim this out, that works. If I trim it in this direction, interesting. So the behavior is just a little bit different there. Is it happening on all parameters? It is. So interesting from a trim there. It is actually kind of repositioning. So it's doing the glide where I had a glide happening. And but it is also throwing an extra breakpoint in there to kind of to prevent any change to that parameter at the end of the selection. So not quite the what I was hoping for there, but it you know, it does give us something interesting to kind of play with. It gives me something to play with there, right? I want to find a workaround for that now. So, but just to show you how you can create clips, it did trim out. So I think probably the whole point of that would just be, okay, when you have a clip created, make your templates for panning really short. And that way, when you trim them out, you know, the glide parameters and stuff are going to be there. And like that. So trimming it out works perfectly, right? Trimming it back in, not so much. But a lot of really cool options here for just setting up templates for things. This is a template track for me. It's just a lot, guys. It's super cool. There's a lot of different things we could do here. I'll do one more thing just to show this with dialogue, right? Up here on the dialogue, we have a spot here where Jeff is talking, and then at this position, we hear the rest of his line while I'm sitting in the car, right, through the car speakers. By the way, just look at this intensity. Look at that. Look at the intensity on the face. Just the eyebrows, the drama. You just feel that? It's real, isn't it? So I'm going to go here. I'm going to select from here to here where we want that regular EQ. We have an EQ on this track here. It's just a default EQ on Jeff's voice. Well, what I want to do now is, in order to make EQ automation clips, I just want to take the output of this to a mono instrument track now. And we'll just call this like Jeff ADR, for example. So we're going to move our dynamics and our EQ down here. I'm going to change my automation window again to plugin only. And we're just going to lock in this EQ for this scene before the scene changes to the car. And so I'm just going to select from here to here. And let's see, is everything in here enabled for automation? I don't know. Yes, it is. Okay, so that's cool. And create our clip. Rename this. This is default EQ. And then we're going to go to Control-Alt/, to lock that EQ in for that position. And then from here to here, what we actually need to do is on screen, bring my video window back up here. We're actually in the car now at this position, right? So this EQ needs to sound a little different now. We need to bring the high pass filter up a little bit more, kind of dull this down, narrow this down, right? Just making this super simple. And so that's a new preset for this position. Control-Alt/, and create a new clip there. And this is going to be, right, car speakers. So here is the default EQ. Here is his voice coming through the car speakers. So if I just route all of the dialogue there through an instrument track, then I can just set up clips to automate that EQ and the things that need to happen to his voice, right? Let's get one more clip down here for, for maybe a more specific phone conversation. If he and I are on the phone talking to each other, a more narrowed EQ, a little more high frequency filter going on there. And we've got just about everything that we need, From there on, we're just automating effects, reverbs, other things again. So leverage these instrument tracks. This is a really cool trick, a really cool feature to throw in here. When are you going to use AUXes after today? I don't know. But let's get some conversation going on here. These are just the things that I came up with, on the top of my head, trying to think in a position of other people. I'm sure you guys will come up with some really cool uses for things like this. And I think it also gives us a kind of a direction for future software development to go, What if we throw AUXes out of Pro Tools entirely? And what if you have this kind of audio track and then you have this universal track? But even audio tracks themselves have an automation clip layer, so you could just drag clips around in kind of a lane kind of configuration as well underneath the audio there. That's what we're doing here, right? That would be amazing. So I'm really kind of excited to see more ways that I come up with this, to experiment with it. I know you guys are too. So just have fun with it. And hey man, just have fun, go create something, do something new, do something original. The tools are all here. Let's just see how the tools get better from here on out, all right? I'll talk to you guys later.